Abby and Zoe were best friends enjoying a quiet evening together. Abby's laughter echoed through the room as she sipped her wine. Zoe's 2-year-old son played on the floor, his tiny hands rummaging through his mother's purse. As Zoe stepped away to use the bathroom, Abby turned her attention to the boy. "What are you playing with, little man?" she asked, smiling. The toddler giggled innocently, his hands fumbling through lipstick and keys until they landed on something cold and metallic. It was a gun. The tiny boy, oblivious to the danger, began waving the handgun around, pointing it at Abby. Her heart sank and panic filled her voice. "Put that down, sweetie. That's not a toy," she pleaded. Her voice trembling, but he didn't understand. And then, the single shot echoed through the house. Abby's lifeless body slumped to the floor, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Blood covered the entire floor. Hearing the shot, Zoe sprinted back into the room. The sight before her was a nightmare, her best friend motionless in a growing pool of blood. Her son still playing with the gun as though nothing had happened. With shaking hands, Zoe snatched the gun from her son, tears streaming down her face. She called 911, choking on her words as she explained the unthinkable tragedy. The authorities arrived, but nothing could undo what had just been done. One innocent moment of a child's curiosity had turned into an unimaginable tragedy.
There was this dude that came in for raping a 2-year-old little girl. He literally stuck a whole broom up his ass. I still have the vision in my head because it looked like a cartoon. You were like, where's the other... Where's the rest of the broom? Yeah.
Did you know that in 2021, the United States government paid $5.4 billion to house child sex predators in their prisons? So this study was released by a Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Health researcher. And yes, like I just said, your hard-earned money that the government takes for taxes, $5.4 billion of that money is being spent on housing child sex predators. I mean, that is an absolutely staggering number. And obviously it has to do with the number of offenders that exist in the United States. There's so many of them, and we have such a big problem here in America with those sorts of crimes. But I literally could not believe that. And here's another disturbing statistic for you. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse during childhood. And data also shows that 12% of the world's children will be abused before they turn 18. I want you to just think about that for a second. Let's say you take a group of 4 young girls, 4 children. Statistically, here in America, it's likely that one of those 4 girls, children, will be molested before they turn 18. Now, repeat that over and over and over throughout the entire population of children in America. That's a fucking problem. That is a massive problem that you don't see politicians talking about too often. And this should piss you off. But to end this, I'm going to play you another clip from that same video, that interview with that guy, discussing how other prisoners take care of child molesters in prison.
There was this dude that came in for raping a 2-year-old little girl. He literally stuck a whole broom up his ass. I still have the vision in my head because it looked like a cartoon. You were like, where's the other... Where's the rest of the broom? Yeah, where's the rest of the broom? And his hands... They had hit him with metal pipes so many times, all the bones were broke on his hands, so he was trying to put his hands down, and it was just like, you know, it's even hard to explain.
Check out this chilling footage as an attacker attempts to steal a man's child right out of his own hands. I mean, this is incredibly disturbing stuff, and this is sadly the reality of the America we live in today. Did you know that every 40 seconds a child goes missing or is abducted in the United States? That means that while you're watching this video, 2 children will either go missing or be abducted. Every single day in the US, on average, about 2,100 children are reported missing. Out of those cases, about 800 of them usually end up being false alarms, but the disappearances of the other 1,300 children that go missing every single day aren't as easily explained. And in addition, every single day, on average, 33 children are abducted by someone who has no relation to them. Someone who isn't a family friend, a parent, someone in the bloodline, a total and random stranger. And what happens to these children? Those statistics are really hard to wrap your head around, but these children have to be going somewhere. And sadly, oftentimes, children vanish. In the United States alone, every single year, 800,000 different children are reported missing to authorities. And on average, about 4,600 of those children that go missing every single year are abducted by someone who has no relation to them. Sadly, oftentimes these children end up in the sex trafficking world, or they end up dead. We have a massive problem here in America, and it's a problem that politicians do not want to talk about. And these statistics, to me, are just incredibly, deeply disturbing.
A taxi driver secretly took this unsettling final photo of this student. She was then found dead inside a water tank at a motel. Debani Escobar was a beautiful 18-year-old law student. She was adopted by her parents Mario and Dolores. On the night of the 8th of April 2022, she'd been with two friends at a party at an events venue in Mexico. From what I can see online, the place is called the Quinta Diamante, and it looks fairly nice but fairly basic. It has a pool and parties were clearly hosted there often. Throughout the night though, guests at the party stated that Debani had actually started behaving really erratically, which was unusual for her. She then ended up in a big argument with one of her friends and locked herself in the men's toilets. By 1:20 a.m, her friends ordered her a Didi, which is basically like an Uber. The male driver collected her and the pair were spotted on CCTV inside of the car arguing. Now, the driver was questioned by police and claims that this was because Debani wouldn't tell him where she wanted him to take her to. He said he was asking for her address and she wouldn't give it to him, and he said she then groped him. Now, CCTV appears to show that it was actually the other way round. At 4:25 a.m, Debani left the vehicle and the driver sat in the car near to her and took that disturbing photo of her. He then sent this picture to her friend, who he obviously had the number for because they'd booked the taxi for her. Now, this was the last photo of Debani alive. CCTV captured her walking towards a motel called the Nueva Castilla Motel, trying to get another taxi but failing. She then seemingly just vanished into thin air. Her dad reported her missing the following day when he failed to hear of her and she failed to return home. A huge search ensued and the taxi driver was questioned by police but never charged with a crime. It wasn't until 13 agonizing days later that there was any news. Unfortunately, it was not good news. Debani's body was found in a water tank at the motel that she'd vanished near to. Her body was badly decomposed due to the water. A government autopsy was conducted and they concluded that she had fallen in, hit her head and drowned. However, her dad was not happy with the ruling. He just felt like this all sounded very suspicious. He had another autopsy done and this one determined that she'd actually suffered and physical abuse prior to her death. Her cause of death was ruled as deep cranial contusion, which is basically bruising to the brain. Following her disappearance and subsequent death, protests were held all around Mexico. People marched the streets holding signs such as "Mexico is a mass grave." Now, Mexico is known for having an unusual and disturbing amount of missing people that some are calling a humanitarian tragedy.
The people pictured behind me had to become cannibals to survive. This is one of the last pictures taken of Uruguayan Flight 571 before it crashed into the Andes on October 13th of 1972. Out of the 45 passengers on board, 28 of them survived the crash. The group of 28 survivors is just the initial survivors. They had to fight it out with the wilderness and each other for 72 days before they got rescued. There was limited resources around them, so they had to cannibalize the deceased. At the end of this, only 16 of them made it and survived. The sad thing about this, after 8 days of searching, the search and rescue was called off. They were faced with a decision, either die or eat the deceased. At some point during this, 2 of the passengers that survived decided to take a 10-day trek to try to find help. And thankfully, they did find help. This whole story is just a crazy situation and doing what you need to do to survive. Very sad and unfortunate story though. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this story. And as always, this video is for informational and entertainment purposes only.
The woman behind me is one of the most hated people in Ohio right now. This is Sydney Powell, and she was just sentenced to prison for ending her mother's life. And the reason behind it was because she was flunking out of college and didn't want her mom to find out. What makes this extra bizarre is that by all accounts she had an idyllic childhood and a good relationship with her mother before this. But the way she ended her mother's life was really horrific, and the brutal nature of the crime left her family and the community shocked. So let's talk about it. Reminder that I tell a lot of dark true crime stories on this channel. Severe discretion is advised, but follow along if you want to hear more. So this is Sydney Powell. In high school, she was considered academically gifted and a model student with a high GPA. Sydney was described as being a sweet girl, but was prone to bouts of severe anxiety. When she graduated, she was accepted to the University of Mount Union in Ohio. However, over the course of her freshman year, her grades began to slip. and in her second year she was placed on academic probation. Her roommates also noticed a significant change in her behavior. Apparently she was sleeping up to 16 hours a day and refused to go outside. So the university suspended her and she went to move back in with her parents. And then Sydney did something that would change her and her family's life forever. On March 3rd of 2020, Sydney Powell ended her mother's life. And this is how it happened. Brenda Powell received a call from her daughter's university, alerting her of her poor academic performance and to let her know that she had been suspended. And Sydney lost it. While on the phone with Brenda, the university officials on the phone started hearing blood-curdling screams and a series of thuds before the call cut off. 19-year-old Sydney Powell hit her 50-year-old mother, Brenda Powell, over the head with a cast-iron skillet and then stabbed her with a steak knife over 20 times. When police arrived at the scene, they were greeted by a hysterical Sydney and said that somebody had broken into the house and attacked her mother. However, police were really skeptical because the scene didn't match what she was describing. She refused to answer any questions and was taken to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. Her hearing started a year later in 2021, and she pleaded not guilty for the reason of insanity. She claimed that she had been losing her grip on reality for months and was suffering from hallucinations. However, the prosecution argued that she didn't meet the requirements of insanity, due to the fact that she had the clarity to lie to her family and police and to stage the crime scene afterwards. The jury sided with the prosecution and found her guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison and will be eligible for parole in 15 years.
On the site of the Twilight Zone, 2 child actors got decapitated by a helicopter. Let's talk about one of the worst movie accidents in history. A man was carrying the 2 kids across the river for a scene, and then the helicopter malfunctioned and landed on all 3 of them. This was basically a stunt gone wrong. The director John Landis actually went to trial because of this. This happened in 1982, and it changed the way that Hollywood actually had their safety procedures and stunts done. It made things a lot safer. However, the working conditions for these 2 kids were very questionable. A lot of people claim that on the movie set, they violated child labor laws by making them work long hours. John Landis also didn't really have any safety procedures before this whole trial happened, so he was a very neglectful director in this case. How he got off, I have no idea. He also took no responsibility for the incident as well. And that does not sit right with me. Steven Spielberg wanted to scrap the entire film due to the tragedy, however, John Landis didn't care, he published anyways. Hollywood being sketchy and people dying on set is still common to this day. What do you guys think about this story?
Farmer rescues alien from crashed UFO, and what they want with humanity will shock you. In the quiet state of New Jersey, farmer Jack Carter led a peaceful life until he began seeing mysterious lights in the sky. On the first night, he ignored the phenomenon, but after talking to his neighbors the next day, he discovered that everyone else had seen them too. The following night, the lights returned, and a suspicious Jack decided to act. Armed with his shotgun, he watched the lights until one of them suddenly descended at high speed toward his farm. On impulse, he fired at the object, which crashed in a field, leaving behind debris. As Jack approached the wreckage, he found something unbelievable. A strange being with pale skin, a glowing appearance, and large eyes, trapped in the debris. Despite the shock, Jack decided to rescue the creature. He took it home, tended to its injuries, and fed it. While trying to make sense of the situation, he asked the question that had been running through his mind. Why are you here? What do you want with humanity? The alien responded calmly, but its words left Jack frozen. What he heard seemed impossible to believe, and what it means for the future of humanity will leave you in shock. The answer changed everything. To find out what the alien said, click for more and comment UFO for part 2.
Farmer rescues alien from crashed UFO and what they want with humanity will shock you. Part 2. In peaceful New Jersey, farmer Jack Carter was living a quiet life until he spotted mysterious lights in the sky. At first he ignored them, but after talking with his neighbors, he discovered that everyone had seen the phenomenon. The next night, the lights returned, and Jack decided to take action. Armed with his shotgun, he watched as one of the lights descended rapidly, crashing onto his farm after he fired at it. As Jack approached, he found something unbelievable. A strange being with glowing skin and large eyes, trapped in the wreckage. Despite his fear, he took it home, treated its injuries, and with courage asked, "Why are you here? What do you want with humanity?" The alien's response was calm but devastating. What Jack heard changed everything he believed, and the future of humanity would never be the same. The alien looked Jack in the eyes and said, "We have come because you are our last hope. Our planet died from the pollution we created. We want to live among you, but we fear humanity is repeating our mistakes." Jack was in shock. The alien was right. They didn't come to dominate, but to save what was left. Would you accept living alongside the aliens?